Good afternoon, all. I trust everybody is safe and well, and welcome to the 25th Open Classroom webinar. Today, we welcome back Cameron Boyle, who will be covering Civil Designer's cross-section plot routine functionality. As always, please feel free to use the text chat service on your GoToWebinar floating dialog to ask us any questions you may have during Cameron's presentation. So, good afternoon, Cameron. Please take it away.
Good afternoon, Charles, and good afternoon to everybody attending today's Open Classroom. We've got a jam-packed session today, so I'm going to start straight away. I'm going to show you how you get from your finished design stage of your road through to your cross-sectional plot, and then I'll also briefly touch on title blocks. The idea is not to reinvent the wheel and create a sheet file from scratch, but rather to take your company's title bar and put it into one of our sheet files. Going back to the design. When you do your road design, you have the option of viewing it in a cross-section. And looking at the display settings of your cross-section, you can put in things like your layer works, your road reserves, your curbs, your slopes, your crossings, and your road fixtures. I'll take a note of this. This fixture is the telephone pole that you can see here on the right hand side. You have the option to include that on your cross sections when you do the plot. Going through the plotting process, I go to plot, generate, go and specify which sheet file to use. And Civil Designer has a whole library of sheet files to choose from depending on what you'd like to plot. You can go and specify your sheet size, and Civil Designer will automatically change the size of your title block depending on the option selected here. Create layouts and dynamically update plots. We'd then go and put in your layouts here at the bottom. And the advantage of using this option is if you make changes to your design, your layouts would then dynamically update. If you do select this layout option, you are able to go and publish these layouts as individual drawings or save them as a DWG. Alternatively, if you don't want to use that option, you could also then just go and generate separate drawings. Also give you BIM information to go and choose from. Specify the start and the end chainage, your vertical horizontal scale, the offsets from the center line. So I'm plotting 13 meters to the left and 13 meters to the right of my center line. Even if you've coordinated your road at 1 meter intervals, you can plot them in 10 meters. Plot crossing services, because of our full-on integration. If you do have sewer, stormwater, and any other service for that matter, they would be included in the cross sections. Plot section from the strings model, that would include, for instance, your junction or intersections with other roads. On the right-hand side, auto scroll to the next page. If the entire road doesn't fit on one plot, Civil Designer would then go and plot it on numerous pages. I'm going to turn that option off for now and just look at one plot. You also have the option to plot all roads. At the bottom here, you go and specify what to plot. And these options that you choose here are important because you use them in your cross-sectional sheet file. So take a second mental note that line number 1 here indicates our ground line, natural ground line on a cross-section of our road. And line number 2 would represent the final design of our road. You could just go and right-click here to turn the options on and off. You could go and specify your pen colors and line styles. When we go through the plotting routine, anything that you've marked in the sheet file editor with these brackets, you will be requested to input this information. Well, let's call this cross-section example, and I'll show that to you once we've done the plot. If you've got more than one layout, it will apply to all layouts if need be. So you can see the ease at which you can plot cross sections. A couple of things that I can point out to you. If, for instance, you look at the bottom here, cross-sectional text that I put in is put in for us. And then over here, you could go and customize the information in this portion of the title block. This information is automatically picked up from a drawing that is by default loaded when you load Civil Designer. Go and look for it. It's over here. I'll show you what it looks like. The location of the drawing is found over there. If you go and change this drawing and put in your company's information here, that would then always be associated with your sheet file. Closing it and saving it. Going to the actual sheet file, I can go to sheet file editor and load the sheet file. So looking over here, that would then go and update your information. Alternatively, if you don't want all this global lines and text, you can simply go and select the information and go and delete it. Alternatively, you could go to Edit, go and select by filter and quick. Here I'm going to go and select everything on my drawing besides regions, and I'll explain the importance of regions. With everything selected, I'm going to go and delete that. And instead of using that information that I've just deleted, I can then bring in my company title block. But before doing so, there's the regions I need to explain. Over here, if I go and select it, this is what we refer to as the global region. Any sheet file will have a global region. You need to ensure that what you want plotted, like your title block and all the information, is inside a global region. Then looking at the cross-sectional region, because we're doing cross-sections here, you also want a cross-sectional region. Alternatively, with something selected in your sheet file, you can also go and right-click, sheet file settings, and Civil Designer will automatically take you to those settings. If you don't have any regions to start with, you could have also went to Draw, selected regions, there's your global region and your cross-sectional regions. Now, having explained that, I can bring in my company's title block just to show you what it looks like if I go to this template. If you do bring in your title block, you preferably want the settings to be the following. A0, I know some guys prefer setting it up for an A1 if you're only going to be plotting on an A1 format. You've got millimeters, you've got scale 1:1, and it's a Cartesian coordinate system. With that in place, you can actually just import that drawing into your sheet file. So going back to the sheet file, I can bring that title block in as a drawing into the sheet file, specify where I want it, and then press H on my keyboard for home, which goes to the center of my screen, and then go and select that drawing that I pointed out to you. When we bring it in, we find that it doesn't quite fit into the global and the cross-sectional region. So you can simply go and select the global region, ensure that the global region is smaller than your paper size but bigger than your title block. Looking at the cross-sectional region, I just need to go and make this a bit higher. I'll take another mental note of this cross-sectional region. I'll use it during the explanation purposes. So that, ladies and gents, is how you could take your company's title block and use Civil Designer's cross-sectional sheet file. You would then save it and go through the plotting process. In my example, I used another sheet file, so I'm going back to that sheet file. And we're going to go into a lot of detail as far as what happens inside a sheet file. So before we do that, I'm just going to position my screen nicely. I've drawn in some diagrams that I've put in Paint for explanation purposes. Going back to Civil Designer, I'm still inside my sheet file editor. Going to Settings, Sheet File Settings. Now we've looked at the global region. Yesterday, Andrew looked at the plan region. Tomorrow, Chris will look at the long section. So let's focus in on the cross-sectional region. This region we already defined in my previous example. So what I've done here is I've gone and put in these two lines indicating my cross-sectional region. Then looking at the layout, there's numerous options you can go and change. As an example, the first section spacing is the distance measured from the cross-sectional regional line up to the top of this information box. Looking at the vertical section spacing, that is the distance from the below cross-section to cross-section information box. Horizontal section spacing, that is the distance from the cross-sectional regional line to that point over there. And then we give you the option of either using section bottom spacing and section top spacing, that is the distances of the actual cross-section from the bottom to the top. Alternatively, if you don't want to use those options, we give you a fixed section height choice. And that would be the distance from the top of the information box to the top of your cross-sectional drawing box. Looking further down here, we give you a whole lot of other display settings to choose from, line types, colors. And then looking at this crossing pipe text, if I go and make that no and switch it to yes again, it goes and gives me a whole lot of options. I can go and right-click over here and go and specify what I want displayed for my crossing services. You could also go and put in your road reserve. If you look at display road fixtures, earlier on I pointed out that you could go and put in symbols in your cross sections. So if you've got this on yes, those symbols will be displayed. Alternatively, if you prefer to go and put in your own symbols inside a sheet file, you can go and select the symbols option and go and specify where you would like them positioned. If you do want to go and put in these symbols, you need to include them in your block manager. Moving on to lines. In order to explain this, I'm then going to move on to another drawing. So we're looking at X and Y axis. I've gone and indicated the X and the Y axis. If I go and right click here, you'll see that you've got different options. So the right edge is indicated on the right hand side there. Left edge isn't this edge, but it's rather this entire vertical line. Top edge would be this line over here, and then the bottom edge isn't this line, but it's actually that line. This is also seen as the 0 point. So if you go and put in any negative figures, like this negative 600, that is measured from 0 point downwards. If you go and put in, let's say, left edge minus a number, it's measured from the left edge going towards the left-hand side. Looking at titles, if you want particular text at fixed positions, this is where you go and specify it. And this is different when you use labels, because when you specify labels, those labels are fixed on a cross-section entity. And if that entity moves, so will the labels or the text. And that is the difference between titles and labels. If I do go and select titles, I can go and right-click there and go and select which options I want. Alternatively, I'm going back to labels. You can see we still got our codes here if you go and right-click as I explained previously. You can go and specify what text you want, like finished, ground, and offset. And then I've also gone and right-clicked and selected cut and fill areas, which would be included in the plotting process. Looking at grids, and for this I'm going to go and open up another drawing here. There's an example of your grids. So you can go and specify your intervals, your pen colors, what text size to use. And I saved the best for last. We go to annotation. This is where the developers would say the number crunching happens. Perhaps some people will call it the magic, where the magic happens, or even where the wizardry happens. Here you go and specify what you want displayed in your cross section. So these figures over here, these black figures, are there because of what we go and specify over here. Now I'm going to go and put in these three last lines so that you can see how it works. We will start with this option here, looking at finish level of my road design. So I go to the cell and I go and right click and I go and select elevation entry of line number 2. And one of the mental notes was that line number 2 represents our final design. Then we're looking at the ground level. And because with the ground level you don't have point location codes, they don't exist. Instead, what we do is we take the position from our design layer and we project it onto the ground layer. So we actually interpolate the elevations of our ground. So we're also looking at layer number 2 there. And then the last one, if you look over here, is the offset. I'm going to go and right click there and go and select offset. All of these with 0.3 means that you're asking for 3 decimal places. That too is the offset on your final design. Moving on to offset and position. If you're going to leave this as off, you're referring to offset. So if, for instance, I go and put in -2 as an example, that would be 2 meters to the left of the center line. But we're looking at edges here. And as you know, not all roads have a fixed offset when it comes to the edges. So it is preferred that you rather use the PLC or point location code. If you aren't familiar with point location codes, you can press F1 to take you to the help file. Scroll down a bit and go and select point location code. In my example, I want to go and put in the center line on the left-hand side carriageway. So we're looking at -102. And if we read the help file, it says 102 refers to the center of the carriageway for dual carriageway road. A negative value refers to the left of the point, and a positive value refers to the right of the point. So bearing that in mind, let's go and put in the left-hand side center line information. Copying that and just pasting it. Where would you like this text to originate from? Same position as the origin of the cross-section. And then we're looking at the Y origin. Now remember, this is our Y axis. And as indicated in this diagram for explanation purposes, if you recall, this was seen as 0 point. So when we put in our finished road elevation, we want it to be positioned 100 below that 0 point. So I go and put in that figure of 100. Next one would then be -300, and the last one being -500. So that would be the hook point or the label origin of my text. I'm going to go and click on OK and save it. And then go and maximize Civil Designer again. Having made changes to the sheet file, if I go back to the original plot, you can see that we don't have that centerline information. So in order to update that, I could go back to plot on top and go and select force dynamic generate. That would then go back to the sheet file editor and make any changes that we made to the sheet file. In a similar manner, if you do go and make changes to your vertical alignment, those changes will be reflected in your cross sections. If you've got any additional questions for us, please do let us know. Until next week, back to you, Charles.
Thank you, Cameron. That was fantastic. And thank you to all who attended. Please join us tomorrow when Chris will be back to cover Civil Designer's long section sheet file functionality. And there's a quick sneak peek of what Chris will be compiling tomorrow. Have a great afternoon. See you back tomorrow at the same time, same place, using the same link. Thank you and goodbye for now.